we're going to be talking about spiritual stimuli. Now, spiritual stimuli, or else the stimulation of spirits, or the spirits touching you, making their presence known, not necessarily interacting with the environment to the point where you see it, but people that aren't used to that spiritual interference, the touching, the burning sensations, whatever, they will take that, they will freak the fuck out, and they'll think something bad is going to happen because some spirits put off these vibes of something bad is going to happen to you. And sometimes this is a defense mechanism. It's not because they're evil or bad or they're going to hurt you. I've known some very benevolent spirits that I wanted to literally run for the hills or a cave somewhere, anywhere, anywhere to get away from them. And then I addressed them and I said, "This is making me nauseous. This is not making me feel good." The the emotional, how do I say it? The vibes that were going out, they dissipated, and it was fine from then on in. There's also a matter that sometimes spirits don't know how intense they're being. It's kind of like when I start talking and I'm very passionate, I don't realize how intense I'm being. And I don't, sometimes I'm not paying attention to whether they're comfortable or not. It's not because I'm not a caring person. I'm a very empathetic, loving person. But sometimes, you get on a roll and you don't stop and think, "Oh my gosh, is this coming on too strong?" And there's some people that you can come on strong and it's no problem. They'll just be like, "Oh, that's just you. I love you." And then there's people like the family that have to let this is intense. This is crossing a boundary, and I respect that. And spirits, for the majority, they respect boundaries. And I know that a lot of us have had bad experiences with spirits. And I can tell you what is, a lot of these experiences are not really the norm. They may be, the only thing that you hear about because shock sells. It gets more views. It puts money in people's pockets. I said the same thing in another video, is that if I were to tell you about this wonderful experience with a Ouija board in a graveyard and how positive it was, people would think that was kind of boring. But it's honest. I did have a wonderful time. Nothing bad happened to me. And I actually use a Ouija board correctly. And I can differentiate the communication aspect and the portal aspect. And that's the problem. People don't know that it has pretty much two uses, which is bringing a spirit into you're summoning a spirit and bringing them to you. If they're already there, then they're there. But sometimes contacting a spirit may give them an opportunity to step through into a realm that gives them the capabilities to interact with you. And that's not good. But that's because of ignorance. I'm not judgmental about that, but I have to admit that when somebody has some sort of hauntings in their home and they're like, "Let's get a Ouija board out," I'm just going to say that's going to make things worse. The spirit is already there, and to contact them using a Ouija board is about as effective as if I were to go into the living room, look at my mom, and call her. Doesn't make any sense because she's right there. So you're not summoning a spirit. You're not bringing a spirit through. You're just communicating with them essentially. But and it can be a wonderful tool. I'm not saying that, but spiritual stimuli is terrifying for those that aren't used to it. There's a lot of sensations that comes with it: pinching, burning, coldness. There's all these kind of physical manifestations that will happen when a spirit is around you. Goosebumps, all the whole works. Nausea, that's kind of common. There's also, in really rare cases, where people will pass out. And I know everybody has the scary Ouija board story, but I can tell you that just because you let a spirit in does not mean that it is an evil spirit. You have to understand, you summoned a spirit without knowing that you did. And now the portal is closed. Logically, portals don't remain open, they remain open for a limited time. And so they're just stuck there. And you're thinking, okay, they're bothering me, they're harassing me. I'm sorry. If you put a bag over my head and took me to some undisclosed location and nobody tells me anything, nobody says, okay, this is where you're at, and I don't have any way of going anywhere, and I have no way of getting myself out of that situation, I think the first thing would be was despair, and then the second thing would be anger. Like, why was I brought here? Why did they just leave me here? Why I'm trying to tell them, and you would, you know, you'd be mad. So they're mad because you brought them into a situation that you can't really fix. You can't fix. And they're hoping that they'll listen to you, but when it comes to these physical manifestations with like visually, that's the only way that they think that they can communicate, because not everybody is like me. Not everybody can understand what spirits are saying, which is why people turn to Ouija boards. But I'm also going to say that just because you've had a bad experience does not mean that everybody's having that. And I'm not discrediting bad experiences. If you had a bad experience, avoid those things that brought you to that bad experience, by all means. That means not playing with Ouija board, not partaking in certain spiritual activities, then do so. It's your sanity, it's your life, and it's your happiness and peace. Do what you have to do, boo. Do you. But the one thing that's very interesting is when people are influenced by spiritual entities, is when you put your hand on a Ouija board, you feel that something is moving you, and that can feel very, very uncomfortable because you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of possession. Ouija boards are not the beginning of possession, okay? You've watched too many horror movies and too many of those shock paranormal investigators on YouTube, okay? That's not what happens. And yes, there are whole books that say it's the beginning of possession. But I'm going to say people can write a lot of shit in books, okay? And say it's the truth, that it's the gospel, that it's absolute fact. But I'm going to say anything you can write in a book, take it with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of things that are over-exaggerated. It's called creative licensing, where you make things a little bit more shocking, a little bit more interesting than it is, because who would buy it, you know? And so things generally with spiritual stimuli, it's really not that exciting as you would think it would be. It can be very scary, especially when you don't know what to expect from a spirit. You don't know if they're good or bad or somewhere in between, or if they mean to harm you or not. But I can tell you this from experience: most spirits out there, they have no desire to possess you, because possession it takes a lot of strength for them. It's harmful to us because we're fighting against them. So it's very much like, it's like they're fighting against the grain, you know? Think of it this way: you are you're a human, and someone has given you the task to move an elephant. You're small. You're not necessarily going to have the strength to push this elephant. You don't have the skills to push an elephant. And if it's not the strength or the skills, you don't know how to get this elephant to move. So it's very much, nobody is really in control. They're not in control. We try to gain control, so that's very abrasive to them. And people just think, oh, spirits want to possess you. No, they don't. It is strenuous, it is painful for both parties. It is not a natural thing for spirits to do. Now, spirits may enter you, they may influence you, they may not necessarily possess you, but they will at certain moments when they feel that you're ready or when you give them permission, they will enter you and they won't take control. They will give you it's very much a coexistence, it's a harmony. There is not a point where I can just be like, okay, I'm not in control of who I am. I am in control. They don't have full control. It is very much like a friendship. I put my hand out, they put their hand out, and we work together as a team. It's not my eyes are going to turn black, or there's going to be blood coming out of my eyes, or I'm levitating, or I'm speaking in a different voice, or speaking in tongues. It's not like the movies, okay? This is not called possession. This is known as invocation. And this is something that has been done since the time of, probably since ancient times. Like the first peoples kind of shit. You know, people did this and they would commune with the spirits. The Aboriginals of Australia would do this. The Maori of New Zealand did this. The Native Americans of have done a lot of spiritual work, and that meant summoning things and using these spirits to protect them, honoring these spirits. And of course, there is in Africa and Haiti, and also the voodoo. That is that is ancestor worship. That's literally where you were giving respects to your ancestors. You're calling upon them to help you, and that's really all that voodoo is. Like, people think it's like I thought so, but there was a lot of harmful stereotypes that were put out there that voodoo's bad. It's worshiping demons and working with them. The demons that you're talking about are deities or lesser beings. They're not gods. They're spirits that they work with. They don't necessarily worship them either. It's more of a coexistence. It's a give and a take. They give them offerings. These spirits give them help. It's just because you set up an altar does not mean that is a we often associate an altar with worship, but how many people do you see, like, if you go to Mexico, there will be these altars of, these altars in memory of a person. So really, it's just an altar is a form of respect. So, to be honest, altars are not worship, and that's what we get mixed up. We think that's worship. That's no more worship than having an altar in memory of your loved one that has passed on. That is respect of the dead. And there's nothing wrong with respecting the dead. I know there's people that have their beliefs, but they're not hurting anyone. They're not bringing evil into their home. They are just, and we should respect the dead. Even if we don't believe in ghosts, we should respect those that have died, especially those that are important to us. That's very healthy, and it's very important that we keep those people in our hearts and in our memories. A person is truly never dead unless they're forgotten. So, there's that. But with voodoo, it's very much there is a higher being. There is like a god on the top of the pyramid, so to speak, the top of the food chain, but there are all these other spirits that they have to interact with in order to get to the higher being. That is voodoo. Nothing to do with demons. There are some entities that might seem demonic or weird, but those are not demons. Those are entities. Those are like Papa Legba, not a demon, not a form of Satan or the devil. He is essentially an angel of death, a person that helps spirits cross over. And if you want your loved ones to cross over as as smoothly as they can, you may leave offerings to top a leg of it. And everywhere in New Orleans, you're going to see that, where you put a dollar or a coin underneath a deity. It's not an idol. Often people get these things as idols. You're not sitting there and worshiping a piece of wood. People aren't sitting there getting a piece of metal and saying, I worship you. Sometimes what they're doing is it's a memento. It's to remind you that this is who you're asking help from. You aren't going to this person worshiping them. You aren't going to them saying, curse my enemies. You aren't necessarily sacrificing animals and cutting yourself and doing that. There is some blood magic involved with voodoo, but there's also a lot of bones. And I am very supportive of any type of witchcraft. It's not for me, but who am I to judge? I don't, I don't like pain. I don't like, so I don't like needles, so I'm not going to have tattoos. So I choose to have my body unmaimed by tattoos or piercings, but I do think it's beautiful when someone else has like a tattoo or a piercing. It's wonderful. It tells a story, and everyone is always just really amazing when they because they want you to see it. They want you to make comments and say how lovely it is, and they always have a story to tell you about it, which is amazing because you get to talk to amazing people that have amazing stories. But another thing is with spiritual stimuli is it's important to know that when you are influenced by a spirit that is truly has your best interests at heart, it is not going to take over you. The ones that take over people are evil, and they don't give a shit about humanity, and they have some anger issues against us. From my experience, I have not experienced a lot of those kind of spirits. I have never had something forcefully enter me. No, it's consensual as far as I'm concerned. And it's not a possession, because a possession means you're taking a hold of something, you're not letting it go. And, their consent is really an important thing within the spirit realm. They do care about their own livelihood, but they also want to live in harmony with us. They don't necessarily want to take over. And that is the misconception. That is the myth that is thrown out there, is that they're demons, they want to possess you. I'm going to say angels and demons are a human concept. It is for us we oversimplify things so that we can understand it. And often spirits will appear to us as angels or as demonic entities. That doesn't mean they're good or evil. I have had entities that looked like angels and they lied to me. And I've had demonic entities that, they look like demon and they were really, really honest with me. And honesty is really key. But I'm going to say this, people have told me about this with Ouija boards and other such things, and they said, well, it could be a demon and they could lie to you. I'm like going to say, okay, any person in this universe can lie to you, whether they're an alien, a spirit, an elemental, a fairy, a demonic or angelic entity. They have the ability to lie to you. They can do that. Now, if someone lies to you, let's just say one person lies to you, and not just a series of lies, but if some person lies to you, are you gonna just lock yourself into your home and not ever leave and just give up on socialization altogether? Yeah, that's pretty drastic. And that's kind of what people are asking me to do, is like, if you're gonna be deceived. I said, okay, let me be deceived. But eventually there's gonna be a truth that's gonna surface, and I'm not gonna take it personally. Like, we're so scared that a spirit is gonna lie to us. Lie to me once, lie to me twice, I'm not gonna fall for it. Yeah. And I have a very strong intuition of whether someone is lying to me or not. So when I hear a spirit telling me something and I feel that there's not like a honest vibe coming from them, I'm gonna spot that immediately. I'm very intuitive. I know when a spirit is lying to me. And I've had a lot of senses when I was about 13, they kicked in. And I knew by looking at people immediately if they were trustworthy or not. And some people are like, well, how could you know? You don't know those. I'm going to say it. If you have an ability to potentially see the truth and see what others don't, that's not evil. That's not the devil. That's not some demonic thing. That is a gift. And who's to say that God hasn't given you that gift? And by denying it, you're denying your higher power, your God. Don't do that. And that's kind of the last words that I said to my ex-boyfriend was, I know that you have gifts, and I want just embrace them. You know, that is part of who you are. That is part of you as a person. Don't deny yourself. Not, I didn't tell him to embrace the darkness. I didn't tell him to be evil. I just said, I know they're scary, but and that used to scare me too because I used to see dead people. I used to see things that nobody else did, and I was mocked and uh, teased and bullied and harassed because of it. So I kept it a secret most of the time, and I had this upbringing that if you see something that nobody else sees and you see something dark, you are a dark person. There's an evil presence, an evil that is taking over you, that is showing you these things. But I'm going to say, just because you think you see something dark does not mean it's evil. Look at all the goth people. I have never met a goth that I didn't like, okay? Because this is the thing. Looks can be deceiving. Someone can be very beautiful and have a very ugly personality. Somebody can be, uh, you know, very plain and ordinary looking, and they're just beautiful people inside, and they have a beautiful personality, and they're lovable and likable. And that's what I see goths doing. I see goths speaking out about abuse, giving awesome tattoos, being a voice to the outcasts, and they do incredible things. And it might have been punk before, but any sort of goth and emo, that's really just somebody trying to express themselves, whether it's their life or through fashion, or they just like to look goth. They like to look goth, and that's entirely up to them. you know I don't care what they're wearing or how many piercings and the tattoos. What I care about is how they treat me and treat others. Are they kicking the dog around? Are they, you know, verbally abusing their mother? Are they treating others as they would treat themselves? Are they loving with every encounter that they do? That's the main thing. Because if they're doing some pretty shady shit on the side, that's not something that I want to be involved with. I don't want to be involved with that energy. So, but I'm gonna say, if you've ever felt a spirit influence you, that is not the beginning of possession. Possession would be a lot more, you would immediately feel like you're not in control. There would be a lot of pain. You would be very drained. You probably would not be enjoying the experience. It would probably be the most extreme pain that you've ever had to experience in your life. And you would feel like hot irons going on your body. You would feel like something is trying to take your soul out of your body because it's that kind of pain. You're gonna know. But if it's a simple touch or a simple, influence on the Ouija board, that is nothing to be really concerned about, because the spirits are trying to help you. They're trying to see you through. And if they're touching you so if something is touching you, or there's a cold spot, or there's a burning sensation, obviously without scars, or there's something like that, that's them trying to communicate with you. They're trying to tell you that they're there. They're not telling you, I'm going to kill you and all your family. They're saying, I am here, and I want to be seen, and I want to be heard. And I am all for that. I remember when I wanted to be seen and heard, and the pain of not having those needs met, not being respected, not being heard or seen is probably one of the worst pains that I've had in my life. And as you can see, I'm getting a little teary-eyed because of it, because I'm not gonna cry, I'm not gonna cry. But yeah, it's really tough to be somebody that has abilities to see things that others don't, because often you get mocked and teased and bullied and harassed because of it. I got it from my family, I got it from my friends, and I got to the point where I didn't cry. I didn't tell people what I was going, because every time I did, it was like, you don't deserve to feel that way. It was taken from me. And now that I'm able to be myself, I've embraced those parts of me. I've realized that this is a gift. It's not a curse. This is a gift to be able to communicate with spirits and reach dead loved ones and make a difference. And I have made a difference in people's lives. And I've never pushed my beliefs on anyone. I've never told them, okay, you worship the God of the Bible, but, my God is, this is an example. This isn't, one of my gods. This isn't specific, but, if someone were to come to me and say, okay, I believe in the God of the Bible, I believe they're influencing me, I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to be like, oh, that must have been Baphomet, or that must have been Apollo, or some shit, because I don't know if you've noticed, but not a lot of witches, pagans, Wiccans, and magic practitioners, they're not burning people's houses down. They're not setting themselves on fire. There's not a lot of sacrificial stuff going on. There's not a lot of, there may be some blood and sex magic, but that's, that is either practiced in private, and we don't have to worry about that, because that's not the norm. People aren't just, having human sacrifices and drinking blood, okay? I know there was Megan Fox and her husband, Machine Gun Kelly. They are freaking weirdos. That is not Hollywood. They are not drinking the blood of children. This is why I know this. It's not the Illuminati, it's not the Masons or whatever or the Church of Satan that's going out and drinking the blood of children. This is how I know. Because we already have a means to use children to make money. And I know there's laws, but there are people that will break them. And there are parents. Look at Macaulay Culkin. There was a lot of stipulations, a lot of laws with the Jackie Coogan Act, that the guy that played Uncle Fester, he was a star in one of the Charlie Chaplin movies. It's called the Jackie Coogan Act. And there was that stuff set in place, but they still took advantage of him. His family still, the father of the Culkins was literally like a slave lord. He expected them all to pull their weight except the eldest. They all were actors. They were all involved with TV or television, and it was forced upon them. It was something they were expected to do, and he wanted to get every last dime out of them. Everything. And eventually Macaulay Culkin took his parents to court, and he won. He won the case. So there's that. And so really what I know, and that's why I know that there isn't like a bunch of child sacrifices and stuff, is because, first of all, we don't know about it. We don't know who's doing it. And a lot of these secret societies and stuff, we're not there. And we cannot confirm for a fact that that's what's going on. If it's going on, that's sad. But since I don't know what's going on, I can't do anything to stop it. I'd like to think I'm not a vigilante. I'm not going to go to an Illuminati party or become a 33-degree Mason so I can expose them, okay? That's not my style. That's way too much work. And it's really, you're borrowing trouble when you think about secret societies. They're secret. Who knows what they're doing? Yeah, they're probably doing some really shady shit that should get them thrown in prison. I'm not going to deny that. No, I believe that there are some horrible stories. I've heard horrible stories about Masons. I've heard horrible stories about the stuff, but I'm going to tell you probably that's not the norm either. Very often when there's these sacrifices and stuff, these are people that are branched off from these societies. For instance, the Illuminati is a branch off of the Masons. And there were some rumors of some human sacrifice in Southern California, and it was and it was this very small group of Satanists. And so from my experience and from my knowledge is that these are, well, not my experience, but from my knowledge, a lot of these sacrifices, they're done so secret, and they're like very small groups that aren't necessarily associated with the Church of Satan or any of these secret societies. So, and really, why are you losing sleep over something that is secret? It's secret. It doesn't concern you. It doesn't affect you. At least not in any way that you're aware of. So don't borrow trouble. But I'm gonna say, majority of witches, Wiccans, pagans, magic practitioners out there are not harming themselves. They are not harming others. They are not kidnapping children. They're not drinking their blood. They're not setting fire to people's homes or going door to door expecting everyone to believe what they believe. I believe in what I believe. I don't need to advertise. I don't need to explain it. I don't need to do that, because you know that there's going to be somebody that is going to shame you. You know there's going to be someone that's going to mock you and harass you and tell you you're wrong. So, it's one of those things. It's like politics, sex, and religion or spirituality. Those are the things that you probably don't need to talk about just anybody. You need to have a select friends that you speak to this about, and people that just get you, and they don't care about the crazy things that you tell them or the unbelievable shit that has happened to you. Those are people you can be your genuine self with. But there's some people that aren't necessarily going to be that thrilled when they learn that you're some sort of witch. So, choose your friends wisely, I would say. But the point is, witches aren't harming anyone, and there's a reason why a lot of witches and warlocks and magic practitioners are solitary. It's because they don't want to have to deal with the abuse, the harm, the shame, the graffiti, and the hateful looks, and just the uneducated prejudice that many people have, because they think that a certain way, that if you don't believe in believe in a higher power in a certain way, you're evil. And that's just really sad, and that's very narrow-minded, because everybody believes something different. Everybody is an independent individual, and for you to expect everybody to just throw everything down on the ground and just say, okay, I believe what you believe, that's very unrealistic. And people aren't going to want to be saved if they are not. If you're thinking of saving people, if someone doesn't want to be saved, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to hear you. Persistence isn't always the key when it comes to preaching and just overall preaching the gospel. I'm not telling you how to preach the gospel. That's entirely up to you. But persistence can be seen as harassment, and harassment is a viable charge within any court system. They can charge you. They can fine you for harassment. And if you continue with it, disturbing the peace, as I said, if you get into someone's face and you don't necessarily touch them, but you act as if you are, you will still be charged for assault. Keep that in mind. And if they decide to press charges, they will. I know. I've known someone that this has happened to. And of course, people try to cover it up, and they said, well, I didn't do anything. You were going to, is the problem. And it's not the thought police, but it was seen as you were doing it. So please don't follow people into the from their home to the parking lot. I had some people, some missionaries, do that. They were asking me where I lived. They were asking for my phone number. They were two very strange men I'd never met before. And I was trying to get away from them, and they were following me. And I was trying not to be rude because they seemed like decent fellows. I'm not going to tell you what church they were affiliated with, but because, it shouldn't matter. But it was kind of, I wasn't really scared, but I was kind of miffed. I was frustrated. I was annoyed by it. I was like, no, where do you live? And I told them. They says, where's your address? And I said, I can't give that to you. What about your phone number? And I said, no, I have to go. And I was walking my dog at the time. So I said, I have to go. Was literally what I said. I wasn't rude at all. Um, and I don't go out of my way if somebody, if some, Mormons come to my door. I'm really, really friendly to them. I don't have anything against anybody that's religious. I just don't like the persistence and the harassment and just the overall narrow-mindedness of like, I believe this, so everybody has to. That's an all or nothing attitude. It's not realistic. I know you want everyone to have the joy that you have, and that's wonderful. Share your joy, live your truth. You don't have to tell anybody about your belief. It's a sacred thing. You can just go to people and say, I have this joy and in my heart, and I want to spend some time with you. Is it okay if I pray for you? And usually they'll say yes, because prayer is pretty harmless. I mean, the way I see it is it's an affirmation. And there's one of those things, like if you say you're going to pray for someone and that comes from a genuine place of love, then it's accepted. But if you pour out your heart to someone and say, this is what's going on, I'm struggling, they're struggling, something else is going on in your life, and they say, I'll pray for you. That's like saying, that is the equivalent of saying, fuck you and your problems. I can't handle it. So I'm going to let God do it. As I said, I used to be a Christian for most of my life, okay? And I understand the gospel. I understand the Bible. I understand the rules and the laws and everything. There's nothing that you're probably going to tell me that I don't already know about Christianity. There may be a few things, but kind of slim. So when it comes to that, I'm very thankful that I was part of a church that didn't do the door-to-door thing as heavily as others. They befriended people before they would teach them about God. And really, you should take your time. And that's the thing. You don't have to talk about your faith or your belief, because that is between you and your higher power. And if you want to share joy and happiness, you don't need to tell them what you're all about. You can just be like, you know what? God loves everyone, so do I. But when people make judgments because of their lifestyle, who their partner is, or whatever it is, that's not the conditions of God. That's not the judgment of God. That is not the because God has an unconditional love, supposedly, and that unconditional love loves everyone. So how can you believe in a God who's the epitome of love, but you believe in hell? And why would he allow people to go to hell if he loves them so much? If he loves everyone, why is he allowing them to go to such a horrible place? Like, yeah, I get it, he's a wrathful God, but like, you can't do that. You can't just be like, okay, he's a wrathful God, but he's all love. That's like me saying, you know what, I'm really hateful, but I'm a loving person. I'm a hateful, evil individual, but I'm a very loving person. It's contradictory, and I'm sure there's people that live that way, but for the majority and for the norm, no, the people don't go around there. There are people that are naturally, I mean, anger and hate is not the same thing. When you're angry, that's not being hateful. Hateful is when you are angry and you remain to be angry and you let it fuel your desires. You let it influence you. You don't listen to anything else. You just let it take you away. It's anger that has stewed over time, that is boiling over and turns into a big explosion like a Mento in a Coca-Cola bottle. Okay, that's what it is. But anger is a great motivator. Anger lets you see what things are. Anger pushes your depression into the path that it needs to. Anger tells you, um, gives you a purpose. It makes you realize that this is why I'm not in that toxic environment. This is why I am here today. And it is okay to be angry about things that you couldn't control. It wasn't your choice. You didn't choose to be in a toxic relationship or a toxic home. You grew up with it. That's not your fault. Don't beat yourself up for being angry. If you're angry, you're not playing the victim. Playing the victim would be like, is literally where you are not willing to change. You're not willing to deal with your triggers. You're not someone that is not that's interested in being a professional victim. They're not going to say things like, this makes me angry. They're going to say, they're going to have more of a, they're going to be fearful of being around other people. They're going to shut themselves off, and they may not even talk to people about anything. That's a victim. But if you're talking about what happened to you and you're angry about it, be angry. Be angry. Don't be scared of these little things, these little thunderclouds. Be angry about what happened to you. Let yourself be angry. Let yourself cry. Let yourself get all blubbery and your snot running down and your eyes all puffy. Get to that point. You need it. Your body needs it. Your brain needs it. It's releasing a lot of tension from your life. You are not any weaker by getting in touch to your more sensitive emotions. It is strong. It is strength that makes you sensitive. It is strength when you're able to express what's going on. It is not a strength to deaden yourself inside. I learned this the hard way. Because if your anger and your emotions aren't expressed and they aren't let out, they boil over and they explode. And sometimes you end up exploding on other people that you care about and love that didn't deserve that. So it's really important that you express your emotions. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or a child, a girl, boy, whatever, trans. It doesn't matter. You need these emotions. These emotions are part of you. And if you do not express them, they will take over you and they will make you do really stupid stuff. You may actually start displaying the toxic behavior that you grew up with, and that's not something that needs to happen. You do not, when you're being triggered, that's not you being a bitch. That's not you getting too over emotional. That's you addressing the fact that you have places that need to heal. And you need to accept those emotions in order to heal. And if you have to throw something or punch a pillow or do something that is vigorous and you're not hurting yourself or anybody else, of course, then do that. Do it furiously if you can, because that stress needs to get out. You're angry all the time, it's a stress. That's releasing cortisol, not cortisone, cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And believe me, I've dealt with it all my life, and I was miserable. I didn't have enough energy, so I was just depressed all the time. So, and in some cases, it can cause weight gain, which it happened with me. As soon as I got out of the toxic relationship, the toxic environment, I started losing weight. I started taking care of myself. I was more motivated. So my depression was very much situational. So I'm just going to say, not everybody is out there to get you. Not everybody is out there doing shady shit, cursing you, trying to take over your life. That's paranoia. That's myths. That's the TV. That's the movies. That's the YouTubers that want you to think that something is going to get out to get you. Shock. It's going to be a shocking experience. I'm going to say no. Unless you feel like you're out of control, it is not possession. You might feel that what you're doing isn't necessarily you, but you would know, okay? It's like if you broke a bone, you would know. It would be painful. You would look at your foot or your leg or arm or whatever body parts that's affected, and you would say, yeah, it's broken. It's broken. So believe me, if there's a possession going on, you would know. And sometimes a lot of what we see is not possession. Possession is not really a thing. Okay, this is how I know. Possession is often mixed up with epilepsy, which isn't always, tremors. It can also be this. You can freeze, you can still be standing. There's also a lot of tweakers, getting off of fentanyl or meth or whatever, and they will do the same thing. They'll act like they're crazy. Remember the bath salts thing? Who was eating someone's face off? Yeah, that kind of shit can happen. And then there's types of mental illness. The Karens, the people that just looks. I've seen a woman literally, do a tongue thing, like she was a snake. But I did not see a possessed person. I saw somebody that was struggling. Somebody has mental illness. Do I think that their behavior is okay? No. But I do not believe that possession is as common as the movies and digital influencers and the priests and pastors make it out to be. A lot of the time is they try to put a tiny band-aid on a big wound. They need to stitch it up, but instead they're putting this little tiny band-aid for a kid and saying, yep, fix the problem. Because what you're doing is you're using the wrong methods. You cannot pray the mental illness away. You can't pray the gay away. You can't just touch someone and say, okay. And a lot of the times, this is what happens is you can send a spirit on its way and convince them or persuade them, or you can just force them out, but they are going to come back. It's just what they do. They're creatures of habit, and Jesus actually spoke about that. A man will clean up his house and clean up his life, but the demon will return. Okay, I'm paraphrasing that, obviously that's not the exact term, don't quote me on that. So yeah, and that's the thing with spirits. Just because you told them to get out, that's their home. You've gone into their territory. You're telling them to. And another thing is, if a spirit is within a person, just imagine you have tape on your arm. Okay, you've seen those videos where you try to get the hair off. That's what you're doing when you try to tear a spirit out of a person. It is going to harm them. And a lot of times these so-called possession exorcisms have gone really wrong because it wasn't a possession. It was a mental illness or a medical, a doctor should have been called. They needed medication. They need therapy. They didn't need somebody to starve them and chant words at them. And there's another thing, is not all spirits recognize a God named Jesus. Some of them just don't know. So you're waving your cross and your rosary and your sage and you're saying your prayers and you're thinking, I'm doing all the things. It's just pissing them off. It's just making it doesn't make any sense. If I sat there and spoke to you in Japanese and I spoke to you very loudly, it's not going to get you to understand it. It's just gibberish to them. It's just like, what are they talking about? They're just confused. And the more you do it, the angrier they become, because you're in their territory. So I don't know, has anybody come into your life, into your home, and told you, you need to move out? I'm kicking you out. What was your experience? Did that feel good? No, it didn't feel good, because you're getting kicked out of your home. That is what you're doing. And when you get a sage, that's not equivalent for an exorcism. I'm sorry. A lot of exorcism has to do with, making sure the spirits pass on or they leave the premises. It's not, especially if they don't belong there. Sometimes spirits don't belong there, but if they've been there a while, yeah. Sage cleanses energy. It does not cleanse a spirit. You are literally changing the energy field that's around them, and that's going to piss them off even more. So if you're seeing that there's more activity after the sage, it's because it didn't work. It's not effective. It is not an equivalent to an actual exorcism or anything like that. So I hope that all of this was helpful. Thank you very much. Love you. Goodbye.